We got that fucking microphone on there too. Take your mic off mute now. Oh. What's up, everybody, and welcome to Roughing the Passer. I guess, John, we're all the way into our divisional round, so the divisional edition. How you doing?
Good. Gonna be a fun weekend.
That it is. So as I said, we're into the divisional weekend, and John, we've had for the playoffs, before we get into too much about the games, just right away for the playoffs, there sure has been a lot of other news going on. A lot of coaching changes, a lot of additional off the field news you normally don't see during and John's gone for a minute, so it looks like he's having some technical issues. But we actually have a caller on the line, so we're actually going to bring them in for just a moment. How's it going, man? And his think you've got your mic muted on there, bud. Let's see here. We'll get this going. There we go. How's it going, bud? How's it going?
It's going good. Cheers. Happy to be here on Roughing the Passer podcast.
Absolutely, man. Well, I think we got John back too. So good. We'll just start with all three of us in here. Mr. Newman, you back on? I don't even know. He's got some camera issues. We'll let him figure those out for just a moment. But as I was saying before John got knocked off, we actually, for being in the middle of the playoffs, there's a ton of, normally the coaching changes and stuff don't start until at least a little after you hear interviews and stuff like that. But you're seeing a lot of news in between these postseason games this year.
Absolutely. I've been fully linked up in depth with the coaching carousel, as I like to call it. And I've actually been following running a special as to how all the dominoes have fallen, and quite interesting how it has worked out thus far, starting with Ron Rivera. Now here we are with Joe Judge.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. John, we got you back here now. You back in with us?
I hope you hear me.
Yeah, we got you here. All so right. As I was saying, John, I mean, what do you think about is this going to be the new norm? Are we going to start to see this news jump this far ahead into the season? Do you think teams are going to start going into this? Because, I mean, this is really a time where, I mean, initial interviews are taking place, but you're seeing a lot of teams really jump on trying to get this stuff started early. Is that do you think that's a sign kind of now of where the NFL is, just of being, I don't know, kind of never ending, never really having an off season anymore?
Yeah, I mean, apparently, these young guys impressed during their interviews. I'm going to be honest with you, that Joe Judge hire definitely out of the box. I'm wondering if the Giants, the Giants.
Well, they whiffed on my boy. They got screwed over by the Matt Rule hire. I think they thought they were getting him. And because they had interviewed him as well, I think they thought he was going to New York. And when he went to Carolina, I think they panicked.
I heard that he actually called the Giants and actually said, if you match this offer, I want to go there. Now, wow. He's not going to say that, and that's through back channels. But he's a New York City guy, like myself, actually. But the problem with his hire, they paid him a lot of money. So now a lot of the other owners, I was reading earlier today, are not happy with Tepper because he set that bar like a young hotshot coach from college. That's going to be what they asked for now.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, and one of the caveats to that also, sorry, pardon to interrupt, was that, he had to be bought out on a $6 million tab from Baylor. There was the common, which is now considered to be a misconception, that Rule coming from Baylor was going to go to his New York roots. Like you had mentioned yourself, John, you're being a New York guy. That has been the buzz of there up north. Following this, like I said, very closely. I actually, kind of work with a couple of people within the league in the NFL Players Association office, and a lot of what I've been hearing was that once he kind of went into the doors of Carolina, realizing the offense that he was going to be grasping, that was something that kind of swayed him. And once Carolina said, we will pay the $6 million, that was the automatic, done.
Well, I love it. I mean, I'm a Panther fan. I'm a season ticket holder since day one. I love finally having an owner that comes in, and I don't give a damn if he pisses off other owners with a contract like this. If that's what you want to give the guy, then give it to him. I like the culture change he's going to bring there. I liked Ron Rivera, but I always said he was a better defensive coordinator, and I think Washington will find that out very, very soon. But, interesting time, at least to say, for a lot of the coaches. But it is playoff time, so we'll keep around here for a little bit, man. You can join us on some of our picks here, but we'll take a look at all the games first off, because there's quite we're down to 4 games left, John. And during the wild card weekend, there were a lot of games that I thought could go either way. I was really not that convinced on a lot of these games, but looking at some of these, I don't know. They seem a lot of, I don't know, to me it seems a little bit almost like the way's paved for a couple of these teams.
Yeah, here's the thing. There's some games I feel real strong on, and then, this round of games, there's always one upset. It's almost like clockwork every year. So if you subscribe to that theory, you have to find a game where the underdog wins. If I had to pick that, people are going to think I'm a little crazy here, but I think that Tennessee might give Baltimore a little bit of a run for their money.
So obviously you're taking, I see the Titans at 9.5 and under 47. So you actually think the Titans have a chance in this?
They have a puncher's chance. Now, if we're just playing pick who wins this game, I'm going to take Baltimore. But with this 9.5 point spread, I'm going to take the Titans. I think this game might be closer than people think, and I wouldn't be shocked to see the Titans. The recipe for them is going to be run Derrick Henry time of possession, and that's how you beat Baltimore. And they got probably the best weapon for that strategy in Derrick Henry. And I think the Patriots defense is better than Baltimore's defense. So I think Tennessee is going to score some points. I might not like the score up, but this game might be, like I said, a lot closer than people think. I mean, I'll take Baltimore, but I'll take Tennessee with the points.
Well, see, I actually completely agree with you. I've got the exact same thing. Titans at 9.5 and the under at 47. I just think I think they hit the actually, you had the over, didn't you? Or did you have? No, you had the under as well. Okay, good. Yeah. No, so I just don't see him going over 47. That's a little high for me. But I think what you said is exactly what's going to happen in this game. Is I think Tennessee is going to try and use Derrick Henry, run the wheels off of him. And I actually, if I had to pick an upset this weekend, I mean, I don't really know if you consider Seattle beating Green Bay an upset, but if you do, then I don't know, maybe I'm picking 2. But if I did have to pick one, then this would probably be the one that I could see possibly happening, but I don't know. I kind of see this set up as a Baltimore versus KC AFC Championship game. I think it's kind of the road's kind of being paved there, which I'll get to in a minute. But I don't know. I'm with you at 9.5. But what do you think?
Oh, you're asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear my name. Sorry. I'm Robbie of the Rum Boys Fantasy Network, by the way. I'm sorry I didn't introduce myself. So what I'm thinking, this is going to be a defensive battle back and forth. Mike Vrabel is very hands-off with this Tennessee Titans team. As we saw, especially during the offseason when this Titans team was gearing up to head into the regular season. Don't get me wrong, I'm a very high proponent of Mr. QB2, a.k.a. Ryan Hill, but I have to go ahead and I have to side with Baltimore here. I am going with Lamar Jackson the unfortunate not unanimous MVP and how he was not unanimous. We'll leave that one.
That's ridiculous.
Absolutely ridiculous. But, one vote is one vote. But I am going with Baltimore. I do think that this game is probably going to be closer. I know that the line is set at about 9.5, 10 there. Both you guys picked it at 9.5. I think it could probably land maybe a little bit closer. Maybe we're looking at about 6-point game here. 6-7.
That's what I'm thinking. I do think it's going to end up being it's going to be a fun game. No, regardless, these are two teams that are playing a lot of fun football. But John, let's move on now, and Robbie will keep you here for the other AFC game here. We've got the Chiefs and somehow, some way, the Texans. I don't understand it. I don't get it. This team haunts me on this fucking show. I can't get rid of them. They just will not go away. But somehow they're still here, and they've got the Chiefs. So, John, I'll start with you. Who you got in this game?
Well, they've been my pick for the last 5 or 6 weeks to win this whole thing. I think this might be the year Andy Reid gets the monkey off his back, as they say, and finally gets his first Super Bowl. Pat Mahomes is starting to get healthy. This is the game I picked where I think it's going to be. There's always seems to be a blowout game during the division week. There's an upset, there's a blowout, and so this is going to be my blowout. I think that if you saw that Texans Bills game last week, and the Texans won in pretty dramatic fashion, they celebrated like. Sometimes you can tell a lot about a team by how they react after a win, and they acted like that, like a team that expects to go further. Just kind of they're happy. Don't get me wrong, but they were like jumping on each other like they won the Super Bowl. And I just saw that, and I said, "Man, that's a team that sort of I don't know if they really expected to win today by the way they reacted." And so I think that they're coming off that emotional high. Kansas City's had the bye week to get healthy, rest, and work on a game plan. I think this one's going to be kind of ugly. Deshaun Watson's obviously an excellent quarterback. He won him the game last week. Let's be real.
He did.
But I just see Kansas City kind of start to finish really put their foot on the gas and make this a shootout. And if this is going to be a shootout, I'm going to take the Chiefs. This is a different Chiefs defense than in the past few years. This has gotten better with
it's a different Chiefs defense even in the past month and a half. The last month and a half of the season, that defense came alive and became really, if you look at I think it was the last 4 regular season games, one of the top defenses in all of football. They turned it around to a defense you really don't see from an Andy Reid team, which is something that could be scary. I'm just like you. This is not, like I said, I think these games are a little predictable. I think this is an under game, and the only reason is because I think, like you said, I think Houston was completely shocked to win that game in Buffalo. I don't think they had any idea they were going to win that football game, and I don't think they have a chance in hell of going into Kansas City and keeping this game remotely close. And I honestly think Andy Reid's going to I think they're going to want to come out there and they're going to want to put some points up on the board quick. I think they're just going to get up ahead 28 points or so, and they're just kind of coasting the second half. So I don't know if it hits over 51, but I do think the Chiefs probably score about 80% of the points.
Absolutely agree, DH. I don't think that it's going to hit over 51, but I do think that the Chiefs you can take the over on the 10, and they're going to go in and win probably by about they're going to win by 2 touchdowns. I see that easy.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you, man. Well, Robbie, thanks so much for joining the show today. And before we let you go, if there's anything you want to plug, I know I think you have a show as well, right?
Yes. Run Boys Fantasy Network on YouTube, and also sportscaster.com and the Sportscaster app on Apple iOS. Download it, check it out. Hopefully, we'll talk a little bit more and get you guys onto those platforms and onto our show. A lot of big things. We've also interviewed 40 NFL rookies over there, so go check out our rookie interviews as well.
Robbie, thank you for coming on, man, and sharing some insight. Hey, I think I speak for Drew here. You know, we do this twice a week during the season. Anytime you want to pop on, man, and bring that intellect, the door's open for you.
Well, certainly let me know. Salute, guys.
Have a good one, man. All right. Well, thanks, Robbie, for joining us today, guys. Like I said, we love it when you call in. And if you want to hang out like you just did for 15, 20 minutes, by all means, be my guest. So, John, before we go into the NFC, there was a question I wanted to touch on when it comes to the AFC. And we're talking a lot, and we just talked about how we expect Baltimore and Kansas City to pretty much I don't want to say coast into the AFC Championship game, but if they play their games, we both expect them to relatively with ease get there. Do you worry at all that it has been almost 3 weeks since these teams have played. And, yes, that can get you healthy, but that can also, we've seen it time and time again. You mentioned upsets this weekend. I think the reason a lot of times you see those upsets come from these teams having a bye week and having that almost too much time off if week 17 doesn't mean that much.
Yeah, it's the rust factor, that's coined for a reason because it's real. I actually think, and it's just an opinion, obviously, I think that rust factor is going to affect Baltimore a little more. Yeah. And I think the reason why is not so much the week off, Drew. I think it's just Tennessee matches up better against Baltimore.
Yep.
So Baltimore is not going to have that kind of room for error where I think Kansas City will. Houston is capable of turning the ball over a couple times, and Kansas City is more of a volume scorer, quicker kind of scorer. Lamar Jackson's obviously the MVP. He's great. That's why they're where they are, and the favorite to get to the AFC Championship game. But, I think when you look at Kansas City and you look at Baltimore, Kansas City's more of a big play offense, and Baltimore is more of a Lamar can either run it or throw it and move the ball up the field. And what Tennessee's going to do is try to take those time off the clock with Henry. And if they do that and Baltimore can't stop them, that's going to really put Baltimore to the test, and that sort of like room for error is going to be smaller for them than Kansas City.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more, man. All right, well, let's move on now to the NFC, and we'll start with I guess the number 1 seed up there and the San Francisco 49ers taking on the Minnesota Vikings. So when you take a look at that game, John, NFC, I think if there are games, like I said, I'm pretty sure about some games and I'm unsure about a couple of games. This is one, at least in my eyes, it's this is a little iffy.
I've been on the Niners bandwagon probably longer than most, but I'm taking the Vikings and the points. And this is another game, Drew, where I can honestly, like Scott just said, I can see the Vikings actually winning this game. Mm-hmm. If Garoppolo turnover early doesn't play well, the Vikings are kind of playing with house money. I don't think no one gave him a chance versus the Saints. Even when we picked them, we said, well, they'll cover. They're not going to win, but they'll cover.
Yeah, exactly.
And not only did they obviously cover, being an underdog, they won outright. So I think they're playing with house money. That makes them dangerous. This isn't like the same situation with the Texans. The Texans were kind of more evenly matched with the Bills than the Vikings were, at least on paper, with New Orleans. And now, they're getting healthy themselves. They have some injuries, and now they're getting healthy. I know Adam Thielen's questionable. He's going to play, and so this game again. I'm going to say almost going to sound like we're talking about last week's Viking game. I think this game, even if the 49ers win, this is a 3 or 4 point 49ers win, and I can honestly see the Vikings. If the Vikings can get up early, this could be the Vikings in the NFC Championship game.
Well, you know how much I've talked about Minnesota. I'm not even going to repeat myself over and over again as much as I have, but I've absolutely got the Vikings at +7 here. And I actually think they can win this game outright, and I think they probably will. I think Minnesota, I think what you just said, they have absolutely nothing to lose. I think the Thielen's playing. That's just all this whole, I don't know, you can call it the TO situation, whatever you want to call it. He's playing. Just gives you something to talk about in the media all week. But I don't know. We've talked on this show a lot about the 49ers. You've obviously on that bandwagon. I'm not. I see this as a game that Minnesota at least covers. If you're going to give me 7, I definitely think they cover. And I do think this is a lot lower scoring game than we think. I don't think this is going to turn into a huge shootout. I don't know. Something just tells me this is going to be a low scoring game. I can't give you really any, at least numbers to support that, but I just got that gut feeling. But we've actually got a caller on the line. We're going to let him on here. What's going on, man?
What's
How's
up?
it going? What's up? Welcome to the show.
How's everybody?
Are you in mourning this week? I see you have a Bills.
I know.
You know me. Cats is a Bills Mafia for life.
So how's it going, Cats? What's going on, dude?
Not too much. I was just listening in and getting your guys' insight a little bit. Got some I got some different opinions on what's going to happen. I think the Texans totally get destroyed. We should have beat them by at least 3-4 touchdowns. That's
what I thought.
So I think they go into Arrowhead and get blowed out by probably at least 5 touchdowns, at least. And that's honest. I mean, Watt played decent, but I mean, on defense, they couldn't stop the pass. They couldn't stop the run. I mean,
yeah.
What are they? They're not going to go into Arrowhead and do anything, in my opinion. And Watson looked awful, honestly. I mean, he let him on the comeback, but first 3 quarters, he looked awful.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely agree with you there. So who do you have in this game right here in the Vikings and 49ers? Who you got?
Honestly, I think Kirk got his 1 win, and I think Jimmy G's gonna come out. I honestly think the 49ers are gonna win the Super Bowl.
Really?
That's my pick to win it all.
Nice. It seems to be a team very split opinions. It's either they're winning the Super Bowl or you don't think they're going to win it at all every single week. I don't know. Interesting team for sure. But that's one of those games I think that's going to be a lot closer than people think. But we actually looks like we have a revolving door of people calling in tonight, Cat. So appreciate you calling in, man.
Yes,
talk to you soon, bud.
Yep.
Thanks, man.
All right. We actually got, I believe, Dan calling in as well. What's going on, dude?
All right. So not to toot my own horn a little bit, but
you're going to?
Who picked that Tennessee game right?
Oh, hush. Yeah. I bet you and about 90% of the other people that wanted to say Brady was over, but
hey, thanks. So we're talking about the Minnesota game.
Yeah.
I think Minnesota's going to take it. Honestly, I really think that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Minnesota is honestly the best complete roster. The only weakness they really have.
See, you've been listening to me. I like it. Yeah, preaching to the choir.
And honestly, Minnesota is going to play a Green Bay in the final. I think Green Bay is going to take Seattle and run them in a little bit because Seattle didn't have a run game, and the defense is really young on Green Bay. And Rodgers, the road's been paved for Rodgers this year. I mean, he's got so many breaks this year. I think this is another break. He's running into a Seattle team that can't run the football. So I really think that it'll be a Minnesota-Green Bay, which that's going to be a good game.
Dan, I love you, bud, but I can't stand that last. I fucking can't stand Aaron Rodgers. But anyway.
Yeah, but
it could happen. But Dan, we're actually going to jump into that game right now. But thanks for stopping by, man. Maybe we'll talk to you next week.
Hey,
all right,
for sure.
See you, bud. Dan. All right. Well, as Daniel just alluded to, the other game of the week is Seattle and Green Bay, John. So,
Green Bay is the opposite of the Niners for me. where I was always like saying, man, we're not taking the Niners serious enough. Yeah. I think we're giving Green Bay. They're the worst. What did they finish? 12-4.
Yeah,
they were the worst 12-4 team I've ever seen.
Yep, I agree.
Honestly, I'm not.
It's because of what Daniel just said. They have a million fucking breaks. That team got break after break after. It's ridiculous.
I'm not sold on Green Bay. To me, they almost like a 6 seed that just lucked in the seeding. And when you get to this point of we'll call it the tournament. When you get to this point of the tournament, you can throw the seeds out because there's no real sneaky teams here. Maybe Houston, you know what I mean? That shouldn't be here. Yeah. But really, every team here has some sort of skill set that they're pretty good. And Green Bay, I mean, Aaron Rodgers is a very good quarterback, but they're just not. Their defense is better than in years past, but that's because in years past they had terrible defenses.
Yeah, exactly.
Their defense is not like a Baltimore's or New England's or even a Kansas City. Kansas City's defense is better than Green Bay. So I took Seattle and the 4 points. I also think Seattle probably wins this game. I think it's going to be under 47. I think this is like a 24-17 Seattle wins. I don't see Green Bay lighting Seattle up. And Russell Wilson is right now a better quarterback than Aaron Rodgers is. And so
Russell, hold on. Well, I'm going to stop right there for just a second because yes, he absolutely is. And I'll say this, Russell Wilson has been a better quarterback than Aaron Rodgers for a very long time.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that would disagree though.
Absolutely. And they're more than happy to, but I personally I'm on that. You can call me a hater if you want. I have no personal reason to. I have no feelings towards Green Bay whatsoever, but Aaron Rodgers is completely overrated to me. And like you said, this is one of the worst. Green Bay honestly has no business being in the playoffs, in my opinion. And I don't know. I look at this game, I see Seattle. Seattle scares me though, because they're relying on a running game that is completely put together by strings and a dude that was out selling hats and t-shirts like a month ago. I know he's not your normal person just hanging out at home. If you watch his Instagram, the dude works out. Obviously we're talking about Marshawn Lynch, but I don't know if you're gonna hinge all that. This seems like another game where, look at this, the Packers are getting a break. They're catching a Seattle team that has a couple injuries last week that's coming in a little roughed up. I do agree with you on this, and I'm taking the Seahawks with the points, but I think this is a game that Green Bay actually ends up squeaking out, making it to the championship game, not the Super Bowl. But I do think it is an under, like you said. I don't see it going higher than 24-17. I think this is a very low-scoring game. I think both teams struggle to get really anything going, but this is one of those where I just see the ball just keeps bouncing Green Bay's way. I'm going to let it bounce their way one more week and give it to them, but it's going to be close no matter what.
Yeah, it's in Green Bay, and we know at Lambeau that gives, that is a home field advantage for.
Remember when we were, at least when I was a kid, that really meant something. Not anymore.
It still does, not as much. I think it's going to be a close game either way. I got it. I see it like a 24-17 game with the Seahawks winning, but what do I know?
Either way, it's going to be fun. So we'll see how these games go, guys. So we had 4 games last week as well, man. So 8 picks overall, and I went 3-5, and you went 5-3. So close after the first week. A lot of the same games this week. Couple of over-unders change. It's the playoffs. I think no matter what, these are going to be pretty close because I think we agree on a lot. I don't think, like I said, I really don't think there's a ton to disagree on some of these games like there was last week. Yeah.
One thing I learned for next year and years from now, the trend on the opening week of the NFL playoffs, take the unders. If you look at like historical statistics, I think the unders come into play 80% of the time. So
yeah, I could easily see that as a lot of teams, like I said, are struggling or limping into the playoffs. Some of the teams are, I don't know, a lot of those matchups are just they're iffy.
Yeah, well, a lot, and the way one bet, I was listening to a gambling show, and the analyst or the betting analyst said basically, and it makes sense, that first week, no one really pulls out all the bag of the tricks. It's like it sounded like a boxing match where the first couple rounds they just kind of feel each other out, and that's why the scores tend to be lower. And now this week the over is more in play according to this.
And that's probably why if you look at all of these lines, it's interesting you bring that up. As I was looking at all these over-unders, they're ridiculously high. Like the lowest one is set at 45 or 44.5. Because
what happens this week, Drew, it's now you're that close, you're that much closer. You play with balls out. You got nothing to lose here except you go home. So now you're not holding anything back, and you're just trying to get to the AFC or NFC championship game. And so I think scores are going to be a little higher. I split it 2-2, but a lot of that's based on what Vegas sets that line at too. So
exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's hard not to take some of them because all of those lines, I mean, you feel like you just said, you had to count because you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, I know it's something around 45. I had to have taken, but these lines are so high. It's a little, and it was something that stuck out to me as soon as I looked at the game, especially. I mean, I understand we're in a different NFL nowadays, but you're used to, I think this weekend, I think this weekend you're going to see a buck trend of the overs, at least in a couple of those games. I do think the Kansas City game probably gets out of hand pretty quick. I could see a couple of them going like that, but I do think you're going to see a couple defenses clamp down and have a couple of pretty close games, especially the Minnesota-San Francisco game. I think that's probably going to be the game of the week.
Yeah, I think, when you look at all four of these games, I mean, the only game that I'm interested in all of them as a football fan, but I think the only game that I don't think is going to be competitive, I think we both agree, we've talked about, is that KC-Houston game.
Yep, absolutely. Well, all right, well, it is the end of the season, so, it's not really normal DFS time, at least, so to speak. If you're playing nowadays, you're probably playing in-game showdowns or something along those lines. Maybe if you want to do a game spread out against 2 or 4 games, you can. I personally would advise against in-game showdowns myself. But, John, if you're taking a look now, let's look into our DFS for those people like me that have to play every single week, because if you don't, something's wrong. Who you got as your starter of the week this week?
Well, I think you go to that blowout game we've been harping on, and I think you can go with a variety of guys on the Chiefs to me. I think you could, obviously, probably the safest pick is Mahomes. I think he's going to be throwing the ball and airing the ball out. And you got to look at, some of those receivers and probably the first one that comes to mind is Tyreek Hill. I know Hardman played well last week. I don't know. He's kind of risky to think, he's going to do that on a week in, week out basis. I think you got to look at, to me, a game where I can see Kansas City. I see that game, as like a 38-21 game. And it wouldn't shock me if Kansas City put a 40 burger up. So, when you're looking at a high score game, you probably go with the quarterback. So I'll say, it's kind of a cop-out, but I think you got to go with Mahomes this week.
I mean, Ray, it's not a cop-out. I think that's a smart pick. It's not someone I'm going to captain.
I think a lot of people will pick it, so you're not going to probably win it because of that pick. You're gonna
if you take him, if you do take him, and it's all, if you're at least doing an in-game showdown, if you take him and you don't captain him and you captain at least somebody like a Tyreek Hill or somebody, I think you're probably perfectly fine in doing that. The only problem I have with the Chiefs players outside of Mahomes is Mahomes spreads it out so much. You never know which one of those guys is going to have any remote amount of touches. Anybody could have 9 or 10 targets.
It'll be Travis Kelce this week.
Exactly. That's what scares me about that team. They burned me a couple of weeks in the past where I said, okay, this matchup looks beautiful on paper, and then Mahomes targets the person that looks terrible 15 times, and they have 10 catches. So they worry me a little bit. Mahomes is an excellent choice, but I'm actually going to go here with a guy I've picked a lot, and I think he's going to do good things this week, and that's Dalvin Cook. He's actually one of the few people that's an absolute star that I would consider captaining, because I do think he's going to be the guy that gets most of the points in the yards in that Minnesota game. I think that's where he's going to really take off. And so I like Dalvin Cook this week. Simply because I think he's going to get an incredibly high volume. I think the 49ers defense, if anything, the 49ers are going to try and make Cousins panic. And if that leads to a bunch of dump-offs too and a bunch of touches for Cook on that end as well, I'll take it. But Dalvin Cook's probably my starter of the week.
Yeah, I like him. It's funny. He when you asked me my pick, he was in my head. I just went with Mahomes. So
who you got as your sleeper of the week this week?
Well, I don't know. Some folks might argue he's not really a sleeper.
There's not many that aren't at this time of the year.
Yeah. I'm gonna call him a sleeper because he just got signed. We talked about this. Ooh. And I'm gonna go Marshawn Lynch. Seattle's already said, Pete Carroll's already said you're gonna see a lot more Lynch this week. And you can say what you want about him, like you said. He's been working out, so I know he hasn't been playing. And he's still Marshawn Lynch. He's quirky, he's weird, but he's also very hard to tackle and very hard to bring down. And
he's still relatively cheap, too. Yeah. I took a look at it actually right before we jumped on the show because I figured you might actually bring him up. So I wanted to see. He's not that expensive. That's not a bad pick. Like I said when we were talking about it, he is Marshawn Lynch, and I think this is a game where I don't know. This, like we talked about, these are two broken down teams that are just kind of bouncing their way around through this playoffs. But you like Lynch in this game. It's funny. My sleeper's actually on that team too, and I think he's going to end up being the breakout player of this postseason, at least rookie wise, and that's DK Metcalf. Obviously, he had a huge week last week. I've been picking him on this show for about 8 weeks now. It seems he's on my list every other week or so as a sleeper or a starter. But I love this matchup against San Francisco. I'm not sold on their secondary. I know there's a lot of talk about it, but it's not the strong point of that defense. And DK Metcalf right now, the way I saw him run routes last week, if he can do that remotely consistent, then watch out. That dude's going to be the steal of this draft 100%. So I love him this week. And I think if nothing else, after his week last week, he's at least going to get a large volume of targets from Russ. And so for that reason alone, at least in an in-game showdown, I'd probably take him.
Yeah, and truthfully, I think for Seattle to win, and I think they will, I think they're going to have another decent game.
The only thing that concerns me, the only thing that does concern me is that after his big week last week, a lot of other people in your league will probably take him. But it kind of depends on what kind of game you're filling out. Like I said, my advice would be to go into some in-game showdowns and then plan on Robert Turbin helping you out with 30 yards or so. But, choice is up to you. But regardless, John, it's going to be an interesting week. We've got, only 3 weeks of football, a month left in the season.
Yeah, this is you kind of get a little sad too because you're coming to the end of the road. But just as well as I do, Drew, with the NFL, there really is no off season because you're gonna have draft prep, you're gonna have signings and free agency. You're gonna have football, and that's what I love about it. It's really a year-round thing. And even with this show, we'll be talking about the draft. We'll be talking about free agency and all that good stuff. And we'll see how this all shakes out.
That we will. Well, guys, like John said, there is no off season in football. We will have no off season, but we will be signing off now. But we will see you Sunday. So thanks so much for joining us, and enjoy this weekend of football.
See us.